Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. Has your highly regulated business outgrown their current systems and processes? Or are you spending precious time making sure that the business flows because only you can make it happen? Well, who should you turn to for help if that is you? Well, that's this week's topic. We're going to address the 3 questions highly regulated business should ask before hiring a COO. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoy this episode of the 3 Questions podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. Highly regulated industries operate under strict government oversight from agencies requiring rigorous compliance with rules on data privacy, safety standards, reporting, and ethical practices. These regulations ensure public safety and accountability, but often create operational hurdles like bureaucratic delays, high compliance costs, and the need for specialized systems to avoid penalties that can reach into the millions. Clearly, highly regulated businesses and industries operate like this need leadership of a chief operating officer. And that is the focus of today's episode. The 3 questions a highly regulated business should ask before hiring a COO. Joining us today from Hollywood, Florida is Julio Gonzalez. Julio is the chief, I love this title, he is the Chief Execution Officer with OptiCution, where he specializes in optimizing business processes, enhancing efficiency, and driving growth for highly regulated industry. Julio helps businesses navigate complex operational challenges to achieve sustainable results. Julio, my friend, it's great to see you. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day for joining us here today.
Wayne, I am excited to be here. You know, I love nothing more than talking business execution.
Yeah, well, and you are an expert. Okay, I want to well, no, not off the record, on the record. So we had a conversation yesterday. So Julio is not just a big picture detail guy, but he's also a minutia guy. So for how many years have I been using Outlook? You know where this is going.
I know.
So I've decided finally to move over to the new Outlook email system. But one of the things I couldn't figure out is how to get my email signature on a meeting confirmation. My friend Julio figures that out. And then I show him, I said, this is how I read my emails. Is there a better way of doing it? And sure enough, he shows me that the way that I've been avoiding for, I don't know, years is actually the best way for me to start looking at. So Julio, you've made already significant improvements in the way I run my operation. So God bless you. And I should also mention your podcast is called From Stuck to Scaled. And against his better judgment, most certainly, he had me as a guest recently. So for those who maybe they need to sleep at night or looking for a bed. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. You had me on the podcast, and I really
It
appreciate
was
it.
a great episode. No one's going to be put to sleep by listening
Uh,
to
well,
your episode number 29, I
yeah,
think it
well,
was.
I really thank you for and so what's the website? You should share the website for the podcast, and you can also find Stuck to Sale on Apple and Spotify like mine, correct?
Yes. So the website is my business website, so opticution.com. If you put a slash podcast, you go to the podcast page. It has the links to Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you too want to be a guest, you can click be a guest and
There
you
you
will get an
go.
intake form. So
Well,
we can get all set up for your podcast
yeah,
episode.
there you go. Well, like I said, if for the folks who go to the Wayne Baxter 3 Questions podcast, it's actually if you go to the bottom of the page, you're right there in the top left-hand corner, and that was a lot of fun.
It
And so
was.
thank you for that opportunity.
No, my pleasure. And at the risk of derailing your 3
Oh, it's
questions,
okay.
uh, I've often joked that I am, schizophrenic, because throughout my career, I've had no choice but to, work at that strategic level and then deep dive into, real grassroots. So I've always been Mr. Fix It, and I can tackle problems at all different levels, thus helping you
Yesterday
yesterday.
was a perfect example of the minutia.
Exactly, exactly.
Julio, that was classic. I think you must have enjoyed the reaction that I gave you, and I was like,
I am going to hold you to the coffee next time we're together.
yes, I told you if you figured it out, I would buy you a coffee. So yes, you have my word, and we'll try to step up the quality of where we
There you
are.
go.
And I've never had a coffee I didn't like, so and if one's a good, a thousand's better. So
There you go.
away
Yeah,
we go. Okay,
and we
so
got some good coffee here. That's
yeah,
all I'm going to say.
oh, we know that. The Crema Cafe places are pretty good. They
Yes,
don't have those in California, so I went to a in Davie, Florida, which is not far from you, right? It's pretty
I
close.
was there at lunchtime.
There you go. Ha. All right, so let's move on here.
Yes,
So to get everyone up to speed, before we get to our three questions, I think what would be a good idea is for you just to give our audience an idea of what we mean when we talk about highly regulated businesses that you and OptiCution advise. And on top of that, you know, yeah, I know your title is perfect, Chief Execution Officer. It has a rather perilous description, but I know it's all in good taste. But what does a Chief Operating Officer do? What role do they play? So I'll leave that all to you, and the floor is yours.
sure. So, a chief operations officer is responsible for delivering on what the company does. And I had to process that because I was going to say sells. You don't necessarily, I mean, we all sell something, but the chief officer executes on the core mission of the business, whether it's delivering customer service or a service, a product, whatever it is. Sales goes and sells something, operations gets it delivered, and then customer service takes care of the customer after the fact. So, every aspect of the business is critical, but if you can't deliver, you don't have a business. And so many businesses either get stuck in operations or they take operations for granted. Um, and that is where, and I'm biased here, but personal opinion, that's where the crux of the business is in delivering. So I help, like you said, highly regulated businesses fix their operations so that they can be more efficient. So what is a highly regulated business? Well, unfortunately, every business is starting to become a highly
Yeah.
regulated business. So that's great for me because it opens up the market. But in today's world, a highly regulated business is one that has to deal with a lot of compliance measures, PCI, privacy, HIPAA, Sarbanes-Oxley, model audit rule, any of those frameworks that dictate how you should operate your business. Um, because my background is technology, I also do extend my operations work into technology, because what happens in the tech space is that you may bring in a fractional CIO or a fractional CISO, but they don't have that perspective coming from the business. Had a conversation yesterday, and there are few great CIOs that really understand the business. They always go back down to bits and bytes, and that was one of my distinguishing factors. When I was managing tech teams, that I wanted to know how the business operated, and I understand business, and that's why when I went off and started my own practice, I wanted to focus on the operation side because when you fix that, everything else falls into place.
Could you give maybe I know you have all this experience with helping regulated business optimize. Can you give a quick example of a common operation pain point uh, in these industries and how the chief operation officer can make a difference.
Yeah, and it unfortunately I did stay a little bit ethereal here because every company is so business so different. But getting your product out the door, right? Again, whether it's physical or service, we tend to get stuck in the minutia of an order, the minutia of processing. There's not a lot of minutia in manufacturing, but even in manufacturing, how do you streamline that to avoid, you know, and I'll go back to, we've always done it this way. That is a curse
The kiss of
phrase from,
death.
it's the kiss of death. And
In our
that's where
industry,
companies
in
get
my
stuck.
industry, Julio, it's this time it's different.
Yeah.
That the we've
And
always done it this way. Yeah.
yeah, what I find time and time again is that you have a process that started when the company was one person, two people, three people, and it's only slightly evolved because we had to do it that way. So now you've got a multi-million dollar product or company that is doing things the same way as when it was a $500 company. And that's where the breakdown takes place because they keep bringing people in and we have to do it this way and we can only stretch this much. And let's think completely outside the box. If we had no restrictions, if you had a magic wand, how would you do this? And it's incredible, how the people that are doing the work automatically start coming up with these fantastic ideas. Oh, can we do this? Of course. And that is where the true value of what I do with businesses come in. It's not me coming in and telling them, oh, you need to do ABC instead of ABC, because they have the ideas. It's facilitating, taking that ideas, extracting them from the people doing the work who are the ones that know best.
Okay, so today we're going to be discussing the 3 questions a highly regulated business should ask before hiring a chief operation officer. Okay, Julio, you're ready? Let's get right to question 1.
Let's do
No
it.
more delays. Question 1, my business is unable to keep up with the delivery of our products to our clients. What steps can I take to resolve this? This would seem right down your alley, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, and it's basically what we just talked about. People get stuck with the things that they know, the things that they feel comfortable with. But at the same time, everybody knows where all of the pain points are. So it's very easy, and I just use the term myself, but it's very easy to say, Wayne, you need to think outside the box because people don't understand what thinking outside the box is. So you need to put them in an environment where they can go through some exercises or you can walk them through their own processes with the right questions in order to get them ideating. And you will see it time and time again, the incredible solutions that come out of these people because they limit themselves, right? My portion of the process is from, here to here. And I can't ask Wayne, hey, is there something that I can do better that would make your job easier? Because I've been told we can't change the process or we can only evolve it so very little. So getting the right people into a room, and the right people are the ones that are doing the work, right? And if you have a huge manufacturing plant, you don't need, all 500 people, but take those 5, 10 key individuals, take them off the assembly line and put them in a room. One, they'll be fascinated that you're asking them questions that, they're in a different environment than their day to day, but they're the ones that have those truly stellar opportunities for improvement that will transform your organization. But when you walk up to somebody, and I'm going to stick with manufacturing here, when you walked up to somebody, on an assembly line and show me the process and what would you do differently, they're in that same space. You need to take them out of the space for a change of scenery, and that is what gets the juices flowing.
So, for business owners that are in regulated sectors like manufacturing or logistics, how can they implement scalable systems like, they use a supply chain audit or automation to ensure that they're compliant while also improving the turnaround. So how do they implement that?
Sure. So there's an old adage in technology that you can't automate what you can't document. And how many businesses have you run into that have documented processes? Even some of the more mature businesses, they built an
SOP,
assembly
standard
line, or they,
operation procedures. Yeah.
yeah, or they know that Billy hands off to Mary, hands off to Susie, but there's no physical documentation. So it all starts with documenting your processes. And similar situation, pull those key individuals, into a room, have them go through an exercise, document that process end to end. And what's funny is, you might take three people doing the same job, and they will have three different solutions to what that portion of their job is. And thankfully, all three are correct. Now, you can improve consistency and efficiency by having one single process. So maybe you need to take three people off the assembly line and walk through that process. But once you have it documented, now you can start comparing against regulations and frameworks. And today, the best thing to do that is ChatGPT, Gemini, take your pick, any of those AI tools. Talk to it about, this is what my process looks like, and we're trying to comply with HIPAA. Um, how does my workflow fit in with HIPAA? Am I compliant? Do I need to do something differently? Or, of course, you bring in an operations person such as myself to do that work for you, because you're taking what AI, which is very general and sometimes not accurate, together with the expertise of someone who's done it. And you can accelerate the process of improving your operations, all in one fell swoop.
So our topic today is the three questions a highly regulated business should ask before hiring a chief operation officer. And joining us from Hollywood, Florida is Julio Gonzalez. And Julio is a seasoned operations leader with OptiCution. Great having you here, Julio. Thanks a lot. Um, I know we're going to get to it a little bit later, but when you look at AI from your perspective, in you servicing, advising your clients, do you
Yes.
look at it as an asset or an enemy? I'm just curious.
It is absolutely an asset. AI will eliminate jobs. Anyone who says that, it's not going to, or it'll create more jobs, it will eliminate jobs. I've been in the industry long enough and in business long enough to have seen what outsourcing and automation did. Spreadsheets alone, when you look at the trajectory of spreadsheets and how that improved, I think, the financial services aspects of an organization, be it an accounts payable person, any kind of tracking. Spreadsheets changed the world. We're seeing that now with AI. And the key, at least for the next period of time, and I'm afraid to even speculate, but the key is being an expert on how to use AI. For a while there, we were seeing prompt creators with salaries of $300,000 and $350,000 a year. That has very quickly evolved. But how do you prompt any of these AI tools? Because that is the key. If you have a small business such as myself, and you're saying, "Oh, I need a marketing piece to sell fractional COO services," yeah, you're going to get a message. But if you say, help me create as an expert marketer, creating a marketing piece for a top fractional COO, help me prepare a message to chief financial officers that would hire me, and make that message high impact, and demonstrate the greatest value. If you have a prompt that is as detailed as that, you're going to get a very different message from help me craft a fractional COO um, uh, email. And an extra tip here, there's an old marketing acronym, WIFM. What's in it for me? So if you tell ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these others, use WIFM while crafting this message, it will completely change the message that is being provided because it will, in fact, put it, to where it is, in your customer's perspective, what's most valuable to them, and not you pushing a product.
So the likelihood of the role of a chief operating officer going the way of the dodo bird anywhere anytime soon is maybe a bit overrated.
Yeah,
But
COOs
the
aren't going anywhere.
AI tools are going to help them just become more effective at what they're
Yeah.
executing.
The AI is going to help every industry, every role do a better job.
That's my take. So let's go on to question number two, Julio.
Yes.
My multi-service medical facility lacks the systems that are required to ensure that we are effectively serving our patients. How can we improve the patient experience while also improving our profit margins? Speak of what's in it for me. Perfect question. Julio, take it away.
Sure. So at this point, every physician's office, every clinic, every medical anything has an EMR, an electronic medical records system. So that would be the CRM for healthcare. The question in your EMR or your CRM is, does it have any kind of workflow in it? Um, I was working for one Medicare Advantage payer, and the tool that we were using had a fantastic workflow in it. And we were prompting physicians to check for those things that physicians didn't think to check for or didn't remember to check for. So, reconfirming that the patient's illnesses or medications or whatever were still, in fact, active, that they were taking the medications. Because especially in the Medicare space, you drop off one diagnosis and that impacts your reimbursements. So, what are those things that you need to remind doctors to do? Because that doctor, and I'm hesitating going back to AI, but I'm going to touch on AI. You want that doctor that has 15 minutes with a patient to do as good a job for the patient and not be focused on data entry in the system.
Mm.
So you're seeing, we've seen, voice recording and transcription for a while in the healthcare space, but now you've got AI that is listening in on the conversation. So the physician doesn't have to turn to the EMR and pick up the mic and, Julio has blah, 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 blah. The AI is always running, always listening. So it's picking up not only the physician's diagnosis and comments, but my concerns and complaints so that it can also prompt that physician and put together a more comprehensive encounter notation than just what that physician would put in. So from the perspective of improving the profitability, making sure that all diagnoses are validated, verified, all medications are in place. Um, Unfortunately, the healthcare world is all about billing the insurance company, whether it's Medicare or private, and getting that complete picture of the patient every single time is what maximizes that billing to the physician. The other thing that EMRs do less of that I try to work with my customers with is the patient journey. How many times do you go into your physician's office and you see the front desk and then maybe you see the medical assistant or a nurse and then you see the physician and the medical assistant comes back in. What can you do about that? There are so many opportunities to make that patient visit that much more efficient and streamlined, more timely. I've walked into doctor's offices where the doctor sits, I have a pain or a follow-up even, and the doctor says, "Oh, why are you here?" Well, did you not take 2 seconds to read, my notes or your notes rather, before you walked in here to know why I'm here? That to me is very upsetting. So fixing that patient journey doesn't have to be difficult. The challenge on the physician end is everything that they have to do. So how do you support that physician? What can you lay on top of your EMR to make that patient journey that much better, or what can you build into your EMR workflow to make the patient journey better? Because it's going to make everyone's life easier. The patient is going to get in and out quicker. The physician's going to have the information that they need, but there's not enough work that goes into that visit as a whole to make the process more streamlined.
So, highly rated, a regulated area like, healthcare where you have, HIPAA compliance, so important here in the US. Are there, in addition to what you've already talked to, are there other AI-driven technologies or processes that facilities are adopting? And from the perspective of reducing operational costs. So I know you talked about a couple. Are there any other tools that are being used?
So I was at a healthcare conference about 3 weeks ago, and I would say that easily 90% of all the products there were either already AI enabled or talking about what they were going to be doing with AI
Hmm.
going forward. Um, I don't know the veracity of this comment, but it's been told to me that the vast majority of X-rays are now being read by AI, and only when there's something questionable or negative, negative in the bad sense, does it go to an actual radiologist to look at, because there's
Hmm.
not enough radiologists, and the AI does a better job of reading the X-ray in many cases because it can detect minute details. So a lot of the technology that we're seeing in the healthcare space is all around better diagnosis, better care, and better care is a big blanket, because better care is talking about pharmaceutical interactions. So when you get a prescription, the pharmacist does check for contraindications between medications. But when you see one of these commercials on TV, you can fix your migraines, but at the same time, your head may explode and all these other things could happen. Um, we're now seeing AI looking at all of those medications that you're being prescribed, and doing a better job than just the major contraindications, because there's too many people that are taking 15 different medications, and at that point a person can't do that contraindication check, because then you don't know any, all of it. So with AI, it can go down that rabbit hole and find all of the things that could go wrong with your medication, and hopefully avoid a serious issue that could land you in the hospital. So that's where the real value is coming in with AI, besides all of the regular business aspects.
Well, I'm going to share something with you, Julio. No, it's our take. This is from the investment committee here at One Capital
Mhm.
Management that, AI, we think is got, people think where it's gotten to. We think it's going to grow substantially from here. So think about this. You've heard of this term hyperscalers,
Mhm.
Meta, Microsoft,
Yeah.
Amazon, Oracle, you know, collectively, they're expected over the next, say, 10 years are going to be investing like $1 trillion in the development of AI. They've got these massive dentist, these data centers with these horizontally linked servers. They're actually the ones that are basically driving and housing AI. Um, they have, even within our portfolios right now, as a portfolio manager, we manage client portfolios for clients in the United States and Canada. 31% of the securities in our equity model now are either AI or AI tangent related. So it's becoming This is the way, I think for now, the non-tech, like technology is driving not only in innovation in the US, but it's also driving industrial production
Yep.
in the US. And it's rather remarkable what we've seen. If you are a non-tech related industry now, in our view, you're almost like a slow grower relative to semiconductors or technology. It's the evolution is, we're in the midst of it now, but to me, it's not where AI has gotten to now, it's where it's heading.
No, and to your point on the hyperscaling, I still have some faith in humanity that we will put the right controls
Yes,
around
touche.
robots,
I'm with you.
so that we don't end up with Terminator in real life. Um,
Amazon has deployed 1 million robots already. They're going to
yeah,
have more robots working for them than people before you know it.
yeah, and yesterday was what, November 18th. We saw a major outage with Cloudflare.
Yes, I
Um,
heard.
And then over the past 2 or 3 weeks, we had a major outage, I think, with Amazon Web Services, and the other
Yep.
one was Azure. Um, and for the listeners, it is Azure, not Azure. Um, it kills me when people say Azure. Um, so this consolidation, which AI is going to exacerbate that much more, because of that scaling, is going to lend itself to more of these major outages that are affecting, thousands of companies at a time, and the people, the customers behind it. I saw the apology today posted on LinkedIn from the Cloudflare CEO, that it wasn't a cyber attack. It was somebody putting their finger in the wrong place. If we can
Oops.
knock down as many companies as were down yesterday by putting your finger in the wrong place, we have a problem. So they need to talk to their operations team, to make sure that they have all the right processes in place so that when they make a change, there isn't that risk of putting their finger in the wrong place.
Great. Julio Gonzalez joins us today. Great guest. Julio, thanks for being with us. Let's get to question number 3.
Let's do it.
I was recently appointed as CFO of our firm's Chief Financial Officer. I'm already getting pushback from our departments because of the reporting procedures I want to put in place. How do I get buy-in without disrupting operations? Well, this seems to be right in your wheelhouse, Julio. So, your
The
thoughts?
the number one cause of failure for any business change is the lack of change management. We think that, by saying, "Hey, Wayne, I need you to go, implement this process, or change how you do it," that Wayne's going to just run off and
Oh, Julio, you just brought up something. I'm sorry. So I remember this is back in my IPC days, and Chris, if you're listening, you'll remember this. Our former, the leader of the firm I used to be with, he was up on the stage in front of 500 financial advisors, and we were going through a CRM change with the company. And there was a lot of, shall we say, discontent. And I remember him up on stage. I can still see him right now going, embrace change. And you could hear the hair on people's arms and the
yep.
back of it's the idea people hate change. Let's be
Oh, and
honest.
and
Generally,
and going back to the beginning, the opening of the podcast, your Outlook upgrade.
yeah.
It's just
The-
you with one application,
and I'm
and you
like,
were fighting it.
it was just like looking at that upgrade and going, I know it's better, but I don't like it. That's exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, darn it, Julio. So guess what? I've converted. Just I don't know if I made that clear. So anyway. It's like a trivial thing, but to your point,
Point
that's
point for Julio.
oh well, coffee and a point. Yeah, we already agreed to that. So yeah, I mean, so there's the
So
idea of having change management processes, right? So
absolutely.
how
Yeah,
how can leaders use this change management, these techniques that you're an expert in to minimize the
yeah.
angst,
So
I'll
so
call it.
it's two things. One, well, it's a couple things, but going down the path of actual change management, it's communication, right? And communication is not saying, Wayne, you need to upgrade your Outlook. Okay. It is having the conversation around why we're upgrading to Outlook, the benefits of upgrading to Outlook, what it's going to look like when you upgrade to Outlook, how we're going to support you when you upgrade to Outlook. So it's a much broader conversation
Or in this
than
case,
the
the new
end goal.
Outlook. So to be clear on my example,
Yeah,
I
because
had Outlook, I was using the old version and now I'm to the new version. And anyway, sorry to
what
derail you here.
what you typically get, in a change management conversation is, Wayne, we're switching from apples to oranges. Poof. And you expect people to say, yes, no problem. But it's understanding the why, finding some, champions,
Features
uh,
and benefits.
yeah. And finding those champions that are early adopters that do subscribe to change so that they can, be that first adopter and help drive that change with the rest of the organization. So there's a lot of those types of things that I help my customers with. But the thing where every business fails is, as a business leader, you go through the change first and you're kicking and screaming. You may be driving the change, but you're still kicking and screaming, and you're going through the change management cycle before everyone else is. And now you're rolling this out through the rest of the organization,
As an
and you,
example, basically, right?
yeah, and you expect the organization to, okay, Julio got it, so we're going to go and do it. No, they are lagging behind you in that change process. So to your CRM, as a business leader, you go through that first because you're seeing the demos, you're talking to the implementation vendor, you're giving them requirements, you're getting demonstrations throughout the process. So by the time that you deploy that CRM, you're already, familiar with it. You're ready to just let's cut over because I'm done with the old CRM. And all of a sudden, team, we're rolling out a new CRM on Monday. And that's when everything comes crashing down to the ground.
Well, unscheduled, but I want to give a tip of the hat to one of the four senior partners here at One Capital, a gentleman named Dan Streetsburg, who has worked over the last 2 years of improving our CRM system, and he is actually like he was the not just the idea person, but he's the actual implementer. So just like you said, perfect. So I think the answer, the short answer to the question is, if you want to foster buy-in, you actually have to be a participant, I think is the basic.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right. Well, um, resist, like, how do you minimize resistance? What do you, beyond being the example, is there anything you can do to sort of minimize this resistance other than being the example? Is there any just last points on this before we move on?
Some people are just negative Nellies, and those you just have to move on, and this is what it is. You set the expectation, this is what we're going to do. And I appreciate the concerns and the feedback and everything else, but this has been decided, we're moving on. But for the rest of the organization, communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot over communicate when it comes to change. um, what you can do in the communications process is be open to every single point of feedback. You want to hear the feedback, you receive the feedback. I hear you, I appreciate the comment. However, this is what we're going to be doing. So you want people to be heard, but at the same time, you can't just be a wavering, blade of grass.
What I got just a couple more quick questions before
Mhm.
we wrap up. What's one sign based on your experience, what's one sign that it's time to bring in a chief operation officer for a company? And how do the the business owner, business leader prepare for that hire to have and to maximize impact?
Yeah, so, one of the biggest signs is you think everything is going well, but the results don't show it. And you're going to see that in a couple of different areas. The typical first response is, let's bring in a fractional CFO who can look at the finances. So they're going to go in, they're going to look at the numbers, and inevitably they're going to come back and say, yeah, we see the problem. Your operations isn't delivering. The unfortunate side or thing that many businesses will see is when they start losing customers. And when you dig into why customers are dropping off, it is generally lack of delivery. Again, pointing back to CFO. So you will see it from one direction, the financing, or the other direction, the customers. And it's never too late, but that's where having the right KPIs and the right feedback mechanisms in place so that you can get ahead of those issues before they arise. As far as how to get ready, to bring in a fractional COO such as myself, it's a change exercise, right? So, you need to get your executive team together and, this is what we're going to do and talk about the hows, the whys, what the expected outcome is, timing. So you want everybody to get a complete picture of what the engagement looks like. And then when I come on board, we have that meeting again because I want to make sure that I get all of those questions out of the way and be able to assess any roadblocks that would come up from the leadership team, because they're going to be resistant to change and in many cases, much as staff would be. So I need to get ahead of those, work with that business leader to make sure that we have the full support of that leadership team so that we can be successful. Because it's not, about me being successful in my engagement, but together obtaining the outcomes that you're looking for when you engage someone like me.
So before we wrap things up here, we're looking ahead to 2026, 2027. Any kind of trends that you're seeing in businesses at all? And I think like regulatory changes, remote work, that business owner need to be thinking about now. Like, is there anything out there? I know we talked a bit about AI already, but are there any other sort of regulatory, like, is there anything coming down the pipe that people should be thinking about as a business owner in a highly regulated industry?
Yeah, there definitely is. Regulations, as much as we think that, they're on paper and they are what they are, they constantly evolve. HIPAA is one that's pretty stable, but anytime you have a change in the Centers for Medicare, running that organization, that does change how Medicare works, and that influences HIPAA. So as you have different regulators in areas that control those types of regulations, there is going to be some change on the let's call it public framework. So things like the security protocols. There's a framework called NIST CSF, the common. I'm going to draw a blank here. NIST CSF is a framework that controls how companies implement cybersecurity. CIS 8 is the other big one. Those are about to be supplanted by something called CMMC. So CMMC is very quickly becoming the de facto standard for cybersecurity. So for any company that has a cybersecurity practice in place, they need to start looking at CMMC. GDPR, even though it's European, continues to inform regulations and frameworks here in the US. So GDPR is something to continue to look at. And then just the general, financial state of the economy. Tariffs will continue to play a role in most businesses. So, international trade, and the downstream impacts from that, I think will be something to continue watching over the next
And I'd
12
like to
18,
say
24 months.
more shall be revealed. Okay, Julio, just before we wrap up here, we have this as we have with your podcast. We're going to put this on our website. And for those who are, watching, they can see all of your contact information on the bottom of the screen. But we have folks listening on Apple and on Spotify across the United States and Canada, by the way. So for those folks that are listening in and they're saying, well, I wouldn't mind talking to this guy, I want to pick his brain at least, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Sure. So I'm looking at my little thingy over here, which I realize still has the old name. I changed the spelling a little bit, but everything goes to the same place. It's OptiCution, OptiCution. All of the social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everything is OptiCution. The website is opticution.com. My email is julio@opticution.com. So you can reach me through any of those mechanisms.
Perfect. Well, Julio, I want to thank you very much. This is really educational and informative, and I selfishly appreciate the time you spend with me so I can upgrade my email experience. So God bless you there. Thank you very much.
If we've got
Uh,
one more second, Wayne, I wanted to touch on, kind of bring all of this to a little bit of closing because, you
sure.
brought up AI, and I responded to a comment on LinkedIn this week about how automation has broken the customer connection, and AI has the risk of doing that even more. So for the folks listening, looking to hire a COO or just, do efficiency improvements on their own, when you save money through automation, AI, any of those types of opportunities, you need to keep staff to manage those processes and leverage them to improve your customer engagement. If there's one thing that I tell all my customers, you have no customers, you have no business.
They are the
So
lifeblood. Customers are our lifeblood.
leverage your
They need to be
savings to
wanted,
improve
needed, and
customer
loved.
engagement. Yep, absolutely.
Well, Julio, thank you very much. Julio Gonzalez is the Chief Execution Officer with Hollywood, Florida-based OptiCution. Julio, thank you, and we will definitely see you soon because I owe you a coffee. So I'll be in South Florida in a couple of weeks, and I'll make right the outstanding debt I owe. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Wayne. It was a pleasure being on your podcast.
Yeah, see you soon. I look forward to the bringing of the Three Questions podcast, and I hope you do find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video, subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive notification of when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.